Welcome back to the Air Force Podcast. I'm your host, Staff Sergeant Trevin Cannon. On this episode, we catch up with Air Force astronaut Colonel Nick Hague, who just returned to Earth from his 6-month trip to the International Space Station. If you're not familiar with the harrowing backstory of his first attempt, I'd encourage you to stop now and listen to the first podcast we did with him. It tells the story of how his first launch was aborted after a booster failed to detach during the launch. However, he was successful on the second attempt. And in this podcast, we discuss the future of space travel, what experiments he worked on while he was on the ISS, and how he got a special phone call from Brad Pitt. All this and much more. Here's our conversation.
2, 1, 0. All engine
Thanks for
running.
taking the time to be on the podcast again, and welcome back to Earth.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. And a little birdie whispered in my ear. They said, "Don't mess this up, or we'll report to General Tom."
Okay. All right. So, 203 days in space. How's your body holding up from having floated around for so long? Is it difficult to do normal stuff like walking and eating?
The body is it's just so amazing. So, on orbit, after about 3 months in, floating around became normal. That was my new normal. And I got to tell you, when I landed, immediately, same day, within hours of landing, they extracted me from the capsule. I stood up and almost immediately was going to fall over until somebody caught me. I couldn't stand at all. My balance was completely out of whack. My inner ear didn't know which way was up or down. And within 12 hours, I started to, my inner ear started to find itself again. I'm now 4 days later, and I'm, walking unassisted. I'm in doing rehab in the gym, a couple hours a day, and life is, my body is returning to normal. So just to witness firsthand how the body just adapts to the things that are thrown at it has been fascinating.
Wow. You received the Order of Courage, which is a Russian medal. Talk a bit about why you received that.
Yeah, I got to say it's humbling. It's a huge honor to receive that. And, so it relates back to the abort that happened about a year ago. We're only a few days away from the anniversary of that launch abort that happened last October. So needless to say, it's been a long year. The Order of Courage, it is.
It's only given posthumously in most cases, to my understanding, right?
It's not obviously it's not a requirement, but it is given for professionalism in adverse situations. So I am honored to receive it. But when it comes down to courage, what I've learned is courage is. What is courage? Courage is defined by how you respond to adversity. And so I got to witness firsthand the lessons in courage, from my commander, Alexei Ovchinin, who was sitting right beside me while that abort happened. I got to witness the courage of all the trainers and operators that sprung into action that day, to the search and rescue forces that brought me home safely to my family. So, I'm going to wear that medal with pride for them, because of the courage that they had. And, it's just truly humbling to be recognized like that.
Well, and secondly, where is that going to go on your ribbon rack? I'm curious.
I am hoping there's someone in the Pentagon with that answer.
Yeah, we'll find out. In the last podcast, you said there'd be about 150 experiments you'd be working on. What ended up being your favorites?
Oh, it's tough to pick favorites, right? So there's so many cool different things that we did up there. Some of them were materials based, so taking pieces of glass and extruding fiber optics, and being able to do it at a quality that far exceeds what you can do on the ground. And it's not just being able to do that on orbit that's cool, but it's the impact that it might have. So being able to do it at a really affordable rate so that it could dramatically decrease the cost to provide high bandwidth telecommunications to people on the ground, to spread connectivity. We messed around with different formulations for rubbers that are used in tires to try to make them more efficient so that they last longer and increase fuel economy. So, trying to reduce the impact that cars have on the environment. Those are materials things. There's medicine things where we're looking at just fundamental processes within the body that help us understand Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and cancer and how we might develop different treatments to counteract those. There's so many things that we're doing up there to understand ourselves and the world around us, and the potential for the benefit of humanity is when you sit back and think about it all, it kind of blows you away. Obviously I'm not the wicked smart researcher that is the one making the breakthroughs. I'm up there collecting the data for them, and it's a privilege to be able to be involved in all those different investigations, collecting that data and getting it back down to the ground.
Now, one of them I saw somewhere about 3D printing human organs. Was that among them?
Absolutely. I never thought I would be loading up an ink printer with tissues or cells for ink, but loading that up and then watching them print away, trying to prove out this technology and produce some samples where they're able to lay down vein structures that under gravity on the ground just get squashed flat, but up in orbit, because everything floats, they can maintain their shape. It's just fascinating.
I can't even conceive that. I don't even have any words for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just when you think about it, okay, yeah, how far away are we before we can just start producing organs in space? It's the potential for the future is just wide open.
You performed 3 spacewalks during the mission, totaling almost 20 hours, and Alexei Ovchinin conducted just 1 spacewalk lasting 6 hours. So either that must have been planned, or you just won a lot of paper, rock, scissors games against Alexei on who got to go outside.
That was planned, but I got to tell you, it's better to be lucky than good. And I felt really fortunate to get each one of those spacewalks. It's a different experience, right? So I can look out the cupola, out the station windows, and I can see the Earth below, but I still feel like there's a wall of windows between me and everything below. When you put on the spacesuit and you've got that helmet, it provides you such a wide field of view, that perspective, it instantly melts away, and you don't feel the glass between you and space. And so you're just immersed in it. And being out there on the station, just kind of looking out over the Earth as it glides below you, you can feel yourself catapulting through the darkness of space, going 17,000 miles an hour, and everything that is just kind of coasting by, and the quiet below you. It's just this overwhelming wave of emotions and perspective, change in perspective. I don't know how to describe it. It's amazing.
I mean, do they account for that? Does NASA account for that because we as humans, we're not really meant to do that. So do they give you kind of like 20-minute window to just sit up there and look out for a minute to process it?
Yeah, so on your first spacewalk, they do. They give you a handful of minutes to begin with to really adapt to what it's like to move out in the spacesuit, because the only place that we really put it together is on orbit. We do lots of part task trainers on the ground where we're either weightless in the pool or we're working with the high fidelity equipment, but we don't do it all together. And on orbit's the first place it comes together. So they give us a handful of minutes before, but we're pretty focused. It's a high risk activity, and so we're out there to get the job done. And if you can find the bandwidth to be able to get the job done and take in the perspective, then that's where it's at. And I got to tell you, the first spacewalk I did, I was all focused on the task, and the blinders were pretty much on, and it was let's get the job done and get back inside. And it's only it's like flying a jet. as you get more comfortable, as you get more familiar, your aperture opens up and you start to take in more of the surroundings around you. And, that third EVA was just such an amazing experience because I was able to take in so much more of what was going on around me.
You got to install some fresh batteries on the station solar power system, and you installed, I guess, 2 international docking adapters for the SpaceX Crew Dragon and the Boeing CST-100. This is for commercial crew spacecraft, so it's on its way.
Yeah, absolutely. And, putting in that second port for the commercial crew spacecraft, it was kind of a sweet treat for me because I know that that's returning launch to the U.S. And I know that there are going to be airmen working, supporting those launches, and being an airman, putting some equipment in place to help facilitate that happening. Airmen launching airmen, it's a pretty cool thing to do. So I was pretty proud to be able to do that, and I look forward to being able to get around and thanking everybody for all that they did. Because it's part of the thing that over the course of the mission there is so much support. The team is gigantic. The NASA team is huge, and then you add on all of our international partners, whether out of control centers in Germany or Montreal or Scuba in Japan or in Star City, Russia. The control centers are all across the globe. And the part that doesn't always get mentioned, but is near and dear to my heart, is all that the Air Force has done to support the human exploration of space in terms of just precision navigation or weather or just the search and rescue effort or just situational awareness and helping us move or track debris and then move out of the way if we need to. So much of what we do rests on the shoulders and efforts of airmen who work day in and day out. That they make it possible.
Well, you were also up there for a particularly special Apollo 11 anniversary for the moon landing, and you were up there. So talk a little bit about how that felt to just be looking at the Earth while we celebrated it.
Yeah, it was special to be up there. I can tell you that even from our low perch of 250 miles above the Earth, the moon is 250,000 miles away. But when you look at the horizon of the Earth and you see the moon peak over the horizon and you see it in the distance, you feel that separation from the Earth. You feel like you're on your way. And for whatever reason, the moon seems more attainable when you look at it from space versus from the ground. And so I am super excited about the direction that we're going. The Artemis program taking us back to the moon, helping us learn what we need to move on to Mars. I'm super excited that that it's happening now, and it's going to be centered out of Florida, and it's going to take a gigantic team just like the space station does, and there are going to be a lot of airmen involved in that, and I'm excited to work shoulder to shoulder with them.
Is it presumed that when we do begin exploration that we'll start launching from the moon?
Yeah, so the moon right now, just in general, is going to be our proving ground. There are a lot of things that we need to figure out how to do to be successful on Mars, and we've been doing that on the space station for 20 years, trying to figure out how to live and work in space. And so now we need to take that to the next step and go back to the moon and stay there for a while and figure out how do we do this long term. Before we take a shot at Mars, we need to test a lot of things out, and the moon is a great proving ground for that. And so, we've got the Artemis program, which is going to have a smaller size space station, if you will, around the moon that's going to serve as a platform for us to go down to the surface of the moon and work on those tactics and techniques, if you will, on how to explore the surface of another planet. And it'll provide us that base to be able to go back and forth from the surface of the moon, and then also be that hub where we can resupply from the Earth. So it's an exciting time. And for anybody that's interested in space, anybody that wants to get involved with space, this is a great time, and there is room on the team for you.
Speaking of interested in space, it looks like this little-known actor named, I think his name was Brad Pitt, recently talked to you on the phone. Were you getting acting pointers from him, or what did you guys discuss?
It's one of those things where it was a unique opportunity for me because I just wanted to thank him, because storytelling is such a powerful motivator. And I've realized that one of the challenges that I've got is telling the story of what I just did on orbit. 203 days. So what did I do? Why is it important? And it's given me a whole new appreciation for, actors like him, who portray themselves in these movies that serve so much to inspire future generations to pursue their passions and to push boundaries and to discover and to just become, try to achieve their own greatness. And so it was a unique opportunity for me to say thanks to him. And, he did ask me my critique of his movie, so I guess I got to be the armchair critic, movie critic for the day.
Well, after a long trip, I mean, that's a pretty long time up there. So after a long trip, it just sort of comes to an end when you get home or when you get where you're going. And you kind of miss being on the road, or in your case, space. Are you affected by wanting to be back up there, or any plans to go back up, or will you just have to buy a commercial ticket up there just like everyone else?
Yeah, so first off, the mission doesn't end at landing. And so that's something that I think that everybody needs to understand. The mission doesn't stop at landing, because now I've been on the ground 4 days. I've done 4 days straight of medical tests where I'm the subject. So we collected before mission data, and now they're collecting their data after mission, and they're still trying to glean the effects of spaceflight and to learn more. And so this mission is going to continue on, and they'll collect data for the next 6 months on me. And so I'm still involved in all of that, as well as rest and rehabilitation. And so I work with a trainer to try to get me back to what I was pre-flight. And so it's slow and steady progress. But I got to tell you that, I'm excited about the direction that the space program is taking. I'm excited about the potential for me to be a part of that in whatever shape that may take. And it's a great time. And once I get my batteries recharged a little bit, I can't wait to get back at it and help us push deeper into the unknown.
Well, I mean, speaking of years down the road, what is 10 years in space? What does that look like for the Air Force? Where will we be?
Yeah, wow. There are so many changes happening right now. 10 years might be a little tough. I can tell you that, within 5 years, you're going to see people on the moon again. And that is going to be a game changer in how we view our place in the solar system and what the future may hold. And so just the next 5 years are going to be an exciting ride.
Well, we hear so much about what you are prepared for. Well, this time around, what weren't you prepared for? Do you have any or recall any memories of any of those instances?
Looking out the window, I wasn't prepared for just the impact that perspective would have. I knew, everybody told me it's a beautiful view. You can see so much. But when you look out the window at the Earth gliding below, it opens up. It's liberating for your mind, and all of a sudden, so many things race through your mind simultaneously. You're looking at the Earth, and you're looking at everything down below, and you're trying to find little features. Can I find my hometown that I graduated high school from? Can I find this feature? Can I find that feature? You're awestruck by just the magnitude of storms and how they present themselves. Or at night, you just see the entire Earth covered in lightning that continues to flash like you're dragging a blanket across the carpet. And all of these things challenge your senses, but then you start to contemplate your place in all of this. I'm not even on the earth and I'm looking down at it. And so what does that mean? And then you start turning your gaze toward deeper space, and you see the Milky Way and all of those stars, and where do we fit in all of this? And so simultaneously, all of these thoughts and emotions, and you just are overwhelming.
Did you feel significant or insignificant? Which was more overwhelming?
So I felt like the Earth was this remote island in a lot of nothing, right? So we're out there in the vacuum of space, and everything we know is right on the Earth. And the Earth felt like this gigantic living organism. And I felt like, I was a small part. Humans are a part of that organism. And, we may be infinitesimally small ourselves, but I can tell you, I can see the impact that we can have on the environment. I can see that, you can see cities, you can see crop fields and circles, you can see how we've changed the landscape below us. And so that we have power to affect the world around us. And so I think that, probably the most profound sense I got out of it was this idea of stewardship. And we need to acknowledge that we can make those changes, and we need to take care of this really special place that we live on.
Thanks for listening to this edition of the Air Force Podcast. And if you enjoyed it, please subscribe to hear more Air Force stories like this. I'm your host, Staff Sergeant Trevin Cannon.